Okay, picture this. A war so incredibly fast, so decisive, that in less than 2 weeks, a brand new country is born. That's exactly what happened in 1971 with the Indo-Pak War. It was a conflict that literally redrew the map of South Asia forever. So that's the big question we're diving into, right? How on earth does a conflict that's over in just 13 days have such a massive, world-changing outcome? Well, to get that, we have to rewind the clock a bit. You see, this story doesn't really kick off in 1971. Nope, the real roots of this go way deeper, all the way back to the 1947 partition of India. That's what created the nation of Pakistan. But this wasn't your typical country. It was, well, it was a geographical puzzle, to say the least. I mean, just look at this. You had West Pakistan and East Pakistan, technically one country, but they were separated by more than 1,600 kilometers of their biggest rival, India. And it wasn't just about the distance. They were completely different worlds. They had different cultures, and this is the big one, different languages. Most people in the East, which was actually more populated, spoke Bengali, but all the political and military power was in the West, and they forced Urdu to be the national language. As you can imagine, this created this deep, simmering feeling of being ignored and disrespected. So all that tension, it finally just exploded. And the trigger was a huge moment. Pakistan's first ever truly democratic general election. This was supposed to bring everyone together, a real step forward. Instead, it did the exact opposite. So it's 1970. For the first time, the people of Pakistan, both in the East and the West, are going to vote. There's this real sense of hope in the air, the idea that maybe, just maybe, democracy could finally fix the huge cracks that had been in the country from day one. And the results? They weren't just clear. They were a total landslide. The Awami League, which was a party from East Pakistan led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, won a massive, overwhelming majority. There was no question about it. They had a clear democratic mandate to run the entire country. And right here, this is the moment everything changes. The powerful military and political leaders in West Pakistan just flat out refused to accept the outcome. They basically said, nope, not happening, and wouldn't let the democratically elected leader take power. That one decision just crushed any hope for a united Pakistan and, you guessed it, sparked enormous protests all across East Pakistan. Now, the response from the leaders in West Pakistan wasn't to talk or to find a compromise. Oh no. Their response was immediate, it was organized, and it was unbelievably brutal. They decided to launch a military operation to just stamp out the protests with pure force. They called it Operation Searchlight, and it kicked off on the night of March 25th, 1971. And let's be clear, this wasn't some kind of police action. This was the army attacking its own citizens. They specifically targeted students, professors, politicians, and minorities. Basically, anyone who was a voice for Bengali culture and the push for more rights. The result of this violence was a humanitarian catastrophe that is honestly hard to even comprehend. 10 million people were forced to flee their homes, an entire population on the move, just trying to escape the violence. So where did they all go? Almost all of them poured across the border into India. You can just imagine the immense pressure this put on India's border states, economically, socially, you name it. What started as Pakistan's internal problem had now exploded into a massive international crisis, with India right at the center of it. Okay, so with this refugee crisis totally out of control and the violence continuing, things were escalating fast. India started to help the Bengali resistance fighters, known as the Mukti Bahini. The whole situation was a tinderbox, and the stage was now set for a direct war, a war that the world's biggest superpowers were watching very, very closely. Right, so this whole thing wasn't happening in a bubble. It was the peak of the Cold War. You had the United States and China on one side, backing Pakistan because they wanted to limit the Soviet Union's influence. And on the other side, the Soviet Union, supporting India. The real game changer was the Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty, signed in August 1971. This treaty basically gave India the green light it needed, acting as a warning to other countries to not get involved. The thing that finally lit the fuse came on December 3rd, 1971. Pakistan, hoping to get the upper hand, launched a surprise attack, hitting several Indian air bases. And that was it. That was the official start of the war. India's response was immediate. They declared war and launched a massive military operation. And India's response was just a masterclass in military planning. It wasn't just a simple ground invasion. It was a perfectly coordinated, three-pronged attack. The army, working with the Mukti Bahini, pushed rapidly towards the capital, Dhaka. At the same time, the Navy blockaded all the ports, and the Air Force took complete control of the skies. This strategy was brilliant. It completely cut off and crippled the Pakistani forces stuck in the east. The result of this incredible, fast-paced attack was a swift, complete victory, and it led to something that would change the map of the world for good. Let this number sink in for a second. Over 93,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered to the Indian forces. To this day, it's still one of the largest military surrenders since World War II. It was a totally decisive end to the war, no question about it. But the most incredible part of this whole story is just how fast it all happened. From that first Pakistani airstrike to the final surrender, the whole war was over in just 13 days. On December 16, 1971, East Pakistan was officially liberated, and the independent nation of Bangladesh was born. So what you've really got to remember is that this was never just about two armies fighting. At its absolute core, this was a struggle for dignity. It was a fight for a language, a culture, and the basic right for people to decide their own future. It was a liberation movement that, against all odds, actually succeeded. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. The echoes of those 13 days are still felt today, in Bangladesh, in India, and in Pakistan. It really makes you wonder, when a country's very first chapter is written with so much struggle and sacrifice, how does that powerful origin story continue to shape who they are for generations to come?